Hey guys, welcome to Weekly Storytime. If you like these storytime videos, give this video a like, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. Subscribe if you're not already. All those things really do help us out. But if you want to get bonus content, dive deeper into the topic of domestic discipline and help support what we're doing here, a link to our Patreon is down below. Definitely check it out if you're interested. So in this week's storytime, I want to talk about a new system that we're using that unfortunately we have already had the chance to try out. So you've heard us talk a lot about corrections on the podcast, and what a correction is a short spanking. Just in case you haven't heard us talk about it before, a correction is a short spanking. Punishments are a much longer spanking. And so those were kind of the two systems that we were using, where a correction is just a short 4-minute spanking. It's designed to be fast. It's designed to offer a mild consequence for more correctable misbehaviors, where punishments really are reserved for things that are very disruptive to the relationship, things like disrespect or disobedience that would be obviously needs to be addressed with a more serious consequence. But we didn't really have anything in between. So CODA decided to incorporate what we call extended corrections, and that's just something that it's still a correction, but it's a longer correction. It's not as long as punishment. And so it really does kind of fit in the middle there. And so we would use extended corrections for things that need more than just a correction, but it's not necessarily in the territory of needing the more serious consequence of punishment. And so this week, we did have the opportunity to try out this system. We talked about it, hadn't really tried it out, hadn't really talked about what it would be used for other than what I just said. And so we had a situation this week where, communication breakdown happened, and CODA decided that an extended correction was the most appropriate course of action for that, to be the consequence for that. And so what an extended correction is that instead of 4 minutes, it's 7 minutes. And one thing that we have recently started to kind of experiment with is incorporating a wooden paddle into our system as well. And so we talked through kind of how to incorporate the wooden paddle into this system as well. So this was the first time that I've been spanked with a wooden paddle since we started domestic discipline. When we first started, we had a wooden paddle, but it was a lot longer and a lot harder for CODA to really get a good feel for. He was also very inexperienced with spanking me at that point because we had just started. And so we kind of thought that the wooden paddle was just something that wasn't going to work for us, that it was just something that was completely ineffective. And so we decided to try a wooden paddle again because we did have some friends gift us a wooden paddle around Christmas time. That was a little bit of a different shape. It's a little bit smaller, a little easier to use, I guess you would say. And we had just kind of been holding on to it. Wasn't sure that we were going to ever try it for spanking. And as I was talking to a different friend, she was talking to me about how her head of household has started using a wooden paddle, and how that was a lot more effective for her. And so I was like, well, I'll bring this up to CODA, see what he thinks. He said he really wanted to try it. We talked about incorporating it into the system, and that was kind of where we left it. And I kind of halfway expected to have like an experimental spanking before we got to the point of using it for discipline, but I guess CODA didn't feel like that was necessary because a paddle is a paddle and he knows how to use a paddle. So what does he need to experiment with it for, right? Or maybe he was planning on an experimental spanking and I just gave him the opportunity to use it in a disciplinary spanking instead. Who knows? I don't know if I'll ever know the answer to that question. I may or may not remember to ask him what his plan actually was. And I guess it doesn't even matter at this point because what's done is done. And so we got into this extended correction, and the breakdown of how that goes is it's a minute and a half on each side with the wooden paddle, so 3 minutes total with the wooden paddle, and then a minute with either the loop or the cane. He can choose between those two implements depending on how severe he wants to make the correction. The loop would be a more severe implement than the cane. And then he would finish with our acrylic paddle. So we go through this correction. It's the first, I didn't expect the wooden paddle to actually be much because of our prior experience with wood. And so he starts with the wooden paddle, and oh my goodness, it was so intense. I did not expect that whatsoever. But he starts, and at first I was like, okay. But by the second swat with the wooden paddle, I was like, oh, this builds. This sensation builds. And by the third, fourth, and fifth swat, I was like, I wanted to crawl out of my skin. I could not handle it. The sensation was building. It was so stingy, but it lingered on my skin at the same time. And I just was like, oh, I don't like this, which is exactly the response that you want to have, right? Because if I liked it, then it's completely ineffective. If I didn't mind it, it's completely ineffective. So the fact that I was just like, oh, I don't like this, and I want to crawl away and hide in a hole just to get away from this sensation. That's exactly the right response you're looking for. So Coda really liked it. He liked how lightweight the wooden paddle was. He liked how easy it was to use. And he really liked the reaction he got from me in that whole process. It was also a lot easier on my skin. My skin has been kind of reacting poorly to the harsher implements that we use, and so he really liked that it was a lot of surface sting. It lingered, the sensation lingered for a really long time. I was sore for a long time after this spanking. And he liked that it also didn't cause any issues with my skin. And so, I mean, he went through the first minute and a half and I was like, oh, I don't like this. Went through the second minute and a half on the other side. And whenever you do the sides, you do one side at a time, that second side, that second round, on the other side, it's like starting the spanking all over again with how it feels, because you're spanking skin that hasn't been spanked at all yet. And so there is this, it's almost like this process of you have that first initial reaction, and then you have that again. And so he did that second side. It was the same thing where except I knew what was coming at that point. I was like, the first side, I thought it wasn't really gonna feel like anything. I thought it was gonna be a failed experiment, and it wasn't. It was so intense. It was so stingy. And then the second side, I was like, I knew the sensation that was coming, and I knew that it was gonna feel awful, and it did. And so he got through that. He did the loop. The loop always feels awful. He was doing the loop at the same intensity that he normally does, but it didn't feel necessarily as hard as it usually does. And so my only feedback to him was that he could increase the intensity with the loop after the wooden paddle, because the sensation that the wooden paddle created kind of prepped my skin to handle a stronger sensation from the loop. And so, but it still felt really awful. Like I was not a happy camper with the loop at all. The thing that surprised me the most about this, and actually the thing that prompted us to switch up how we're going to do this system next time, is after the sensation of the wooden paddle, because I don't know, because it lingers on the skin longer, because it's more stingy on the surface of the skin. I have no idea why, but he went in with the acrylic paddle and it didn't feel like anything. Like it felt like literally nothing. I could feel that he was going in as hard as he usually does, but it took a good 20 seconds for me to register that it felt like a paddle. It was so strange because that paddle is usually really hard to take. And so I did not expect that at all. And in fact, afterwards we were talking about it and I told him, I was like, hey, when you start with the acrylic, it just didn't feel like anything at all. And he's like, okay, I thought that he thought that he wasn't delivering the swats effectively enough, because he's like, I could tell like you just weren't having a reaction to it. And I told him, I was like, no, I could tell that you were going in just as hard as you normally do, or if not harder, because when I wasn't having a reaction, he was really trying to create that. And I said, I could tell, like, you were really going in, but it just didn't feel like anything. Talking to my friend who they've been recently experimenting with wooden paddles, and they also have the acrylic. She was saying that she experienced the same thing, where the wooden paddle just creates a sensation that almost makes the acrylic paddle feel like nothing. So that was a very interesting experience. I've never experienced that before, where I just had like a lack of sensation. And so what we are going to do next time is that we're going to kind of retire the acrylic paddles for a little while, just to see if the wooden paddle ends up being more effective long term. Obviously, the acrylic paddles aren't going anywhere. They will still be an option if we need to switch back. But we're going to kind of finish with the wooden paddle as well and see if that still creates the sensation that Coda is wanting to create to get the effect that he's wanting to get. He really loved how lightweight and easy it was to use that paddle. And I have no idea. I'm sure that somebody's going to ask, like, well, what's the paddle made out of? I have no idea. It was gifted to us. It's very, very lightweight. I mean, I could reach out to our friends that gave it to us and ask them what it's made out of. But we did order a paddle made out of rosewood, which is a dense wood, but it's also known for being very stingy as well as somewhat thuddy. That was the description online. We will see. That hasn't come in yet, so we'll be experimenting with different kinds of woods just to find what works best for us. But that was a new sensation. That was a new experience. I didn't think that a wooden paddle was going to work at all, just because of our experience previously. And again, I don't know if that first wooden paddle was just Coda's inexperience in delivery, if it was the size and shape of it, because it was more of like a long paddle. It was more of like a fraternity style paddle. That'll give you an idea of the shape and size. I don't know if that was the issue of why it just didn't feel very intense at all, or if it was just a lack of experience. But for whatever reason, that paddle didn't work at all for us. But now the smaller paddle that Coda is much more experienced in spanking me, has a much better technique, in his delivery, and he really liked it. And I will say that it was super effective. I was sore for quite a while after that, and so I will say that I hated it. I did not like the sensation. I did not like going through that, but that's what made it effective discipline and the lasting reminder of being sore for a while definitely helped as well. So it was a positive experience. It was a successful experiment, and we will continue to kind of experiment with this new paddle that we're ordering that should be coming in the next week and a half or so. We'll experiment with that. We will just see how our different systems work, incorporating the wooden paddle, and we will, I mean, of course, I'm going to tell you guys about it. I'll pretty much every time I get spanked, I make a story time about it, so you're welcome. I know you guys like hearing about it, so again, just leave me a comment, let me know that you do. And yeah, so that's pretty much the story of that. And I think let me know if you want me to make a video where I just kind of lay out what our punishment entails, what an extended correction entails, and what our corrections entail, just so it can be all in one video. If that's something that you guys are interested in, let me know, and otherwise we will talk to you next time. Bye.